Hi, good evening, everyone. I haven't been on in a couple of weeks, but I just wanted to get on here and share with you some things that have been happening with me lately. I hope all of you are doing well. This has been an interesting December, to say the least. If you guys are watching the headlines like I am, it's kind of like you've got one foot out the door, but you're also, you still got to celebrate the season, or acknowledge Jesus's first coming in some way. And it's a special time of year normally, and it always will be. But this has been a very difficult Christmas season for me. It just feels like it's very, very hard to really get focused on Jesus and the reason for this season. And we're to celebrate him every day. We'll make that clear, but at the same time, there is nothing wrong with setting aside time to celebrate his first advent. And I just found myself, taking a walk today in the sunshine and just thinking, this just doesn't feel like Christmas for some reason. And I'm, spending a lot of time with the kids and doing a lot of things with them. We're probably going to go Christmas caroling with our church later this week, and just, making the most of the season, and setting that time aside so that my kids can understand the importance of Jesus in this his first coming. But I've had a few things happen that have pushed me to look up, and I feel like there's a common theme running between all of these, and it's to look up because our redemption is running. It's nigh. And just ignore me messing with my hair. It's unfortunate that I can even see myself. I'm trying to look up at the camera and not down. So if you see me looking down, your eyes kind of tend to look down when you're filming at yourself. So back to the case in point, December the 5th, I was on my way to yet another funeral. Now, this is probably the fourth funeral I've been to this year. Yeah, it was the fourth. And I've had a lot of friends lost, or a lot of friends of friends, or family of friends, and so forth. And, I'd even thought of on the way there that the first person that had passed this year that I'd gone to their funeral, their name happened to start with an A. And this last person's name actually started with a Z. I thought how, the Lord is our Alpha and Omega. He's the first and the last. And I was praying, Lord, let this be the last funeral here on earth that I go to. And as I was thinking about that, all of a sudden this big flock of birds, and I mean, I want to say hundreds of thousands. I've never seen so many birds, probably at least thousands upon thousands of birds, flew up past me and over me and around me, and it was the largest migration I think I've ever seen. It filled the horizon of the sky, and I don't know what kind of birds these were. They were maybe they're just regular blackbirds, but they were in droves. And I thought, you know what? I just had this thought that these birds, just the sheer number of them, I thought, I hope and I pray. But I also wonder, will the rapture be that way, or will there just be, a few points of light here and there as we're taken? I hope it's a huge crowd. I hope it's something like that, where it just fills the sky. And so that happened on the way to that funeral, December 5th. Then a couple days later, it was a Tuesday, so December 5th was a Sunday. Tuesday, I was in the middle of working, and my husband and I both work from home. And I've got my earbuds in, and all of a sudden I hear this long blast. I mean long blast, and it had not stopped. When I took my earbuds out, I took them out, and I said, "What is that?" And my husband was on the phone with someone, so he couldn't really leave his desk. But I went outside, and my neighbor came outside too, and we're both listening to it. It was like a long, I don't know if I can really replicate it without waking my kids up. It was not like a siren I've ever heard before. And I know we have a few factories around here who test out their emergency systems. And we have a fire department that does a tornado drill every month and all of that. But this was nothing I've ever heard before. And it was like a long, I'll just try it real quick. It was like that, but it was really, really long. And it didn't go up or down. It stayed on one note. And it was very, very windy that day. Incredibly windy. It's been windy all week. And, gale force almost. It was windy, and I could easily hear it over the wind. And it wasn't like, wind running through a tube or something like that, like the eaves or anything like that. This was louder than that. It was definitely some kind of siren. And it went on and on for something like 10 minutes, maybe 15. It was a long time. And I was just standing out there perplexed. And I came back in after it was over with. My neighbor didn't know what it was, and, thought that was strange and kind of stored it away. And then I called my sister, my twin sister in New York that night, and she said, and I described it to her, and she said, wait a second. She said, was it really windy there? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, it's really windy here too. And I heard what you're describing exactly. I heard it over the wind. And I was looking at the trees, half expecting them, something to happen, like the sky to open up. But it was over the tree line, and I could hear it. And it was a long siren, and it didn't go up and down. It was a straight sound like that. So she lives probably 500 miles from me, and she heard what she thought was the same thing, and she told me what time she heard it. It was the same time I heard it. So I don't know if that's a harbinger of something to come, if that was... I kind of joked with her that it was dress rehearsal for, the big blast, but I don't know what it was. Hard to believe that it's a coincidence, or even that it was someone testing their sirens when my own sister heard it 500 miles away. So that was strange. So that happened the 7th. Then the night of the 9th, which would have been a Thursday night, I could not sleep. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't ready to go to bed yet, and my husband had fallen asleep earlier than normal. And I thought, you know what, I need to get some time in with the Lord. And I'm normally, people say they have different stages of the day or night that they tend to focus on prayer. Some people burn the midnight oil, some do in the morning, whatever. But for some reason, this is not my normal time to pray. But it was probably about 11, I don't know. And it went on till past midnight, but I was praying, and I sensed in my spirit something was happening. It was very windy that night as well, and I knew storms were likely to happen in the middle of the night. And this was right before all those, I didn't know how bad it would be, devastating it would be, because I don't live in the area where it happened, but I'm not terribly far north of it. And, we were still getting a lot of the stuff from the same system. But before that even hit us, I was in prayer, and I felt like something was off and something was going to happen. Of course, later would come to find out the next day that yes, tornadoes had ripped through Kentucky and Tennessee, and it was just a big mess. Well, they think over 100 people lost their lives, or there are people not accounted for. I know at least 60 in Kentucky. But anyway, prior to that, though, while I was in prayer, I felt in my spirit, the Lord telling me, you're casting your cares before me, but soon you're going to be casting your crowns before me. And I just felt such immense peace in hearing that. Guys, we're going to be casting our crowns at his feet very, very shortly. We're going to be receiving crowns very, very shortly. Prior to that, we're going to be taking up very, very shortly. Prior to that, we're going to be hearing his trumpet. One way or another, he'll get our attention and we will go. So I was so comforted by that, even in the midst of all the loss. And everybody needs to be praying for these people. They're lost. But I feel that the hand of the Lord is lifting. And so this grace age, this grace period, or this age of grace, or this age of the church, whatever age you want to call it, his age of grace is lifting, and his hand is lifting. And this is just a consequence of a people rejecting him over and over and over. He is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. But when people keep rejecting him and keep rejecting him, there comes a time when he will lift. He will lift that grace. So that was another thing that happened in the sky that night, literally. The tornadoes hit. And I believe that that was yet another sign of the times we are living in, and the fact that people spoke about it in terms of it seeming like these tornadoes had a mind of their own, and that they were mowing over cities. They were targeting cities. And when one guy said when it went through the city and then it didn't hit one area, it came back and hit another area. So it's almost like it was being directed, which makes me wonder. Now Satan is the God of this world right now. He runs the world right now, but the Lord is allowing these things, and I think sometimes his restraining hand is being removed in that regard. Now their state restrainer is not removed from this earth yet. We go and we have the Spirit indwelling in us. That's when the restrainer goes, or vice versa. So we have to go with him. So, okay, so that happened. And then yesterday happened. Last night, I had just come back from a nice night walk, actually, with my 3-year-old. I bundled her up. We wanted to go look at lights, and we were walking around the block, and we came back, and it was just nice. And we came home, and I just read to her, and we're just thinking about getting the kids to bed, and all of a sudden the lights flickered off. Well, they came back on again. And then they went back off again. Came back on again. And then they went back off a third time. The third time they stayed off. And the kids, they panicked, and we kept them calm and got flashlights and everything. And, I'm sitting there with one of those wind up machines that are supposed to wind up and do all these neat things. It's like a gadget that has a flashlight and a radio and a charger on it and all this. Yeah, I couldn't get it to work. So now I know. If I'm ever in a emergency situation, if I don't get another one of those, I'll be out of luck. So it's often in emergencies when you realize you need what you need and it doesn't work. I had tried it out before in good times and it worked just fine. So that's usually how it works. But anyway, but instead of panicking, we got the kids to bed and everything. And I remembered that there was supposed to be a meteor shower last night. And I just saw my kid run behind me. But anyway, so I took advantage of it, and I went outside and kind of sat in my husband's car. And I was, sitting there with my back on my husband's car and his windshield. And I was looking up at the sky and waiting. And sure enough, I think it's called the Leonides meteor shower. And I think it's good for another 2 or 3 nights. But last night it was very busy. And the city lights were all off because I had found out that a car basically had hit a transformer near my sister's house. And it had taken out almost the entire small town that we live in as far as electricity goes. So, our city lights were off. It was absolutely clear out. It was like the perfect opportunity. And isn't that funny how, sometimes things line up like that? And I'm believing that these things are not a coincidence, that sometimes the Lord has something to reveal to you, and he will, use opportunities like this. So I went outside, I was talking to him and looking up at the sky, and I suddenly got this immense fear that hit me, that I was getting ready to, it was kind of trepidation that I was getting ready to be, we're getting ready to be taken, and we don't know what day. It could be now, it could be 10, weeks from now, months from now, whatever, but it feels close. And I was out there and I was just trying to picture what it would be like to be taken up like that, because I had the whole vast sky in front of me, stars everywhere, and it frightened me a little bit because it's an unknown. That's what it is. And, the Lord, I felt him just speaking to my spirit and saying, do not fear. I am with you even unto the end of the age. And that's what this is. This is what we're looking at, is the end of an age. And just then I saw a big fireball go across the sky. I had seen meteors at that point. I'd seen several, in fact. And but this thing was orange, bright orange, and it lasted, a full 2 or 3 seconds. So I had time to look at it. And I involuntarily said, "Whoa." And it was just beautiful. But I just felt that the Lord was confirming to me not to fear the unknown, and that He's got us. He had taken me on a bit of a journey last night, and I didn't know whether to break this up or not, because there is a lot here, and maybe I will touch upon some of this subject at a later time. But I felt the Lord tonight kind of breaking it down for me on what He wanted me to discuss real quick with you. Like I said, all of these events have led up to Him pointing me to the sky, saying, "Look up." All of these events happen in the sky. And I just think it's really interesting. I'm starting to get neck cramps from looking up at the sky, actually. No joke. I know we're to occupy until He comes, and we're not to focus on just His taking us, but there's a real hunger just to be with Him. And I think for most of us, that's really what it is about. It's not just so much an escape as to be in the presence of our Savior Jesus Christ. Yes, I mean, if we're honest, this world scares us, of course, when we take our eyes off of Him and look at the waves. But the real thing is that when we get to diving closer and closer into a fellowship with Him, and I know a lot of people have with all that's gone on in the last year or two, in the last few years, when you do, you'll find that your desire is just to be in His presence. So I want to touch upon what I felt Him saying to me in the Spirit is, "You are casting your cares before me, soon you will cast your crowns." And I thought that was interesting because it reminded me of Revelation. And I'm going to go over to Revelation 4:4 at first. So we're around the throne. It says around the throne were 24 thrones. Now I want to point out that the 24 thrones are hugely symbolic, biblically speaking, of the 24 priestly positions. And King David, actually commissioned 24 priests to hold a station at different times. They would each have their chants, kind of if you think about Zechariah later on, John the Baptist's father, he had to take his turn. So they would, I don't know if they cast lots or what they did, but they were on a roster of some sort. And, you would fulfill your priestly duty. And there were 24 of them. So the number 24 biblically is actually a doubling of the number 12, which speaks of God's authority. But 24 speaks specifically of priestly service in His temple, which I found very interesting because I used to wonder who the 24 elders were. And maybe I'll do a better study on that soon. That is kind of where I was stuck, because I wanted to do a study on the 24 elders. Hi, Vivian. Why don't you go back to bed, sweetie? That's my 3-year-old. Good night. Good night, little ghosty. Little sheep. All right, so anyway. See, don't you know that you can't do this no matter how late you think you are and the kids are in bed? They're not. They're, the mice will play. They're definitely up right now. I'm not going to wait till they fall asleep because it will never happen. So I'm going to carry on. So what I was saying was that I really wanted to do like a study on the elders versus the saints that are under the altar. There is a big difference between the two. When I first started studying this, it became very, very crystal clear that the elders represent us, the raptured saints. And I'll tell you there is a good tie to this in First Peter, and I'm going to get to that, but I want to read Revelation 4:4. It says, around the throne there were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white robes. Notice they're wearing white robes. And they had crowns of gold on their heads. Again, they have crowns. Skip down to verse 10. The 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, you are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. So what is happening is they are throwing down their crowns, which is reminiscent of the Bema seat, the crowns we receive at the Bema seat. So that is another identifier with the rapture saints. And then when they do it, they are worshiping him. And we're going to worship him in spirit and in truth, which we should be doing now. But this is an act of worship. So these casting of crowns is worship. So when the Lord was telling me, you're casting your cares before me, but soon you're going to be casting your crowns. You're going to be casting all the good things that you did that I rewarded you with back on me, because you're going to, in essence, be glorifying me through that act. You're basically giving me back all the glory that I just handed you. I handed you, accolades. I handed you reward, but you're going to say, here, this is yours. I lay it back at your feet. Because we recognize through his grace, that's the only way we would receive him. It's the only way that we would live a life that pleases him as well. And of course, it's not our salvation is not based on our works. Our works are out of devotion and love to him, service to him. But you see, there's no room for self, when we are his and we're in his presence. There's no room for self. There's no room for ego. There's no room for any of that. So I think it's a beautiful act of worship to be rewarded, and then in turn just hand back the reward and say, yeah, but this is because of you. This is all for you. And it's because of you. And it goes on in chapter 5, verse 8. Now when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures, which is another topic altogether, and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each having a harp and golden bowls of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. So what are they doing? So they sing a new song, you're worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, and you were slain. And you've redeemed us to God, by your blood. Bingo. That would be the rapture saints. You have redeemed us to God by your blood, out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and have made us kings and priests. There's that word again, priests, to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. So he has seated us in heavenly places with him. You see that we are basically playing the part of a priest. We've got our golden bowl full of incense and the prayers of the saints, which is exactly what the priests in the Old Testament would do. They walk in with their incense and they would petition the Father for those, for those in their care. And they would, sacrifice for those people's sins and for their own. And they were purified, but they would sacrifice for the sins of the people. Well, that there no longer remains a sacrifice, thanks to Jesus. So now we're left with the prayers of the saints and a golden bowl full of incense, which is what they are. So there's an aroma. Our prayers are an aroma to him, and that's another topic. This is just so rich. I started studying this. I started really going down a rabbit trail with this last night, and I think I was several hours in, and I was just like, you know what? One thing leads to another, which leads to another, which is how it ought to be with Bible study. But this book has blessed me. There remains a blessing for those who read Revelation, and now I know why. There's so much that blesses me. There's so much rich material here, and anyway. So as if that wasn't enough to tie us, he even calls us kings and priests who will reign with him. Says, you have made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. That's referring to New Jerusalem, or at least the 1,000-year reign where we reign and rule with him. So this clearly is identifying us with him. But in case you were not quite sure, there is another tie that Peter talks about. In 1 Peter 2:9 says, "But you are a chosen generation," speaking to the Gentiles who had come to Jesus. Because at this point, the Jews had largely rejected the message of the gospel. And now both Peter and Paul had Peter, his main ministry was to the Jews, and Paul's was to the Gentiles. But he's speaking at large to followers of Jesus. And he says, "But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood." There's that word again. "A holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." So now we've got two witnesses to this priesthood, to these 24 elders. So if you go back to Revelation, I just want to tie this up real quick. These 24 elders they start mentioning them. Let me see here. I believe it's in chapter 4. But the interesting thing is it's right after all the churches have been written to. And it says, "After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven." So after that, they come on the scene. They're mentioned. And I believe it is because this supports a pre-tribulation rapture. Because after that, a lot of people are thinking that we're on, we're up to like the sixth seal and all of this, and we're in the tribulation. Well, I can understand that because what we're going through right now is unprecedented, but we're not, because it specifically says we're there to witness him. Basically, heaven weeps. The elder says, it says, "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals?' And no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or even look at it. But one of the elders said to me, 'Do not weep.' So John was weeping. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and to loose its 7 seals." And then it goes on to describe the 4 creatures and the 24 elders watching the proceedings. So clearly, we're there watching him before he even opens the very first seal. So guys, we're not in the tribulation just yet. We'll be there to watch the very first seal be opened. And it's all there. It's all there in Revelation. I ask that you pray about it. Pray and ask for discernment. But fear not. You cast your cares upon him now, but soon you'll be casting your crowns. If you do not know Jesus, remember this. He died for you 2,000 years ago on a cross. Now his blood, it paid for every sin you've committed, past, present, future. Then he, 3 days later, rose again from the dead. But you have to believe that he did these things for you. And follow him. Follow him. You have to receive him. Everybody talks about, you may have heard other watchmen and women talk about the term metanoia, which is repentance. True repentance is just turning away from that sin and turning toward Jesus. Recognizing your need for him. Call out to him today. Call out to him. Believe on him. Profess that he is Lord. And you will be saved. So I just want to leave that with you guys. I hope you have a wonderful night. This is probably the longest message I've gone on about, and I may do another one about the martyrs. I do not know. It just depends if the Lord just calls me in that direction. I found it very interesting. And you guys, I encourage you to get into Revelation and not be afraid of it, but really pray and ask for the Lord to show you and give you discernment on Revelation. I think I've said enough. It was a long night, but you know what? You hadn't heard from me in 2 weeks, so I think you can tough it out. 30 minutes. All right. I almost muted myself. Now I know how I did it the first time. All right, you guys, I hope you have a wonderful night. I'm going to double check on this and make sure nothing got muted. God bless you. Have a wonderful, I'm going to say it, Merry Christmas. And I'm probably going to catch some slack for that, but that's okay. Merry Christmas, you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Good night.